Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy here, and today we are going to continue our discussion on the major scale, and I'm going to show you again how this looks on standard notation and in tablature, just as a follow-up to the video on the 3 notes per string scales that I did a couple weeks ago. So again, the whole purpose of this is to help you fully know the scale, know its formula, know all of the note names that are part of the scale. Also getting to know where the note names are on the neck, so you'll learn that better and in a more musical way. So instead of trying to learn all of the notes across the neck all at once, you can learn them in the groups that we use them. Scales are the basis for keys, and songs are in keys. So we can learn them one key at a time, one scale at a time, and it's a much more musical way of finding your way around the neck. And today I'm also going to give you an introduction to how this particular scale fingering can fit within chords in a chord progression, so that you have an idea of where in the scale you can start a pattern. So if you want to use it melodically, or if you want to use it as part of, say, some static speed licks or something like that, I'm going to give you an idea of how you can go about that with this particular 3 notes per string pattern. So with that, let's jump right into this here. And this pattern, we're going to start again with C major, which is where we usually do. It's kind of ground zero for music theory stuff. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to input this scale. Now, you might remember from the previous video that I did on the linear scales, the C, the note C that we used on the staff, was way up here, almost at the top of the staff, it was in the top half of the staff. But when we do the 3 notes per string scale version, we're actually going to be starting, this started at the 8th fret on the low E string, and that note is actually right there. Okay, so that's our starting note, and that's C. Then we're going to go up to D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then we're going to keep going. We've got D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and now we're up, at this point we're up on the high E string, and we've got 3 more notes up there, and that's D, E, and F. And that ended up in the wrong space, so let me undo those. I thought for sure that actually did another octave up. That's still in the wrong spot. Let's do another octave up. D, E, and F. There we go. So that's what it looks like when you're playing the 3 notes per string scale fingering, and you're just running it up, da 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 da, and so on and so forth. That's what you're playing. This is what it looks like. It's just a bunch of notes in a straight line, going from line to space to line to space to line to space. Now, you might remember when we, in the previous video, when I discussed the staff, right? We said that there are 5 lines and there are the 4 spaces in between them, and that's where we write the notes. This G clef or treble clef circles the line G, so it tells us where the rest of what the rest of the note names are for these lines and spaces. And you can see here in a bit more detail how I'm extending the staff by use of ledger lines and also the spaces in between those lines. So we get to this top F right here, which is the top line. G is the space, followed by A. B is the next space. C is this line. D, E, and F. And this takes us, this F right here is up on the 13th fret. So let's see what that looks like in tablature. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to copy that down to the tablature. It's going to ask me, the lowest fret here is going to be 8. And it's not quite right. You'll notice that some of these are a little off. There's only 2 notes on this one and 4 notes up here. So what I need to do is I'm going to make a couple of quick adjustments. This comes down here, and this comes down here. And now we've got our 3 notes per string fingering that we are very familiar with, right? So we've got our the 8th fret, 10th fret, 12th fret. We do that over the E string and the A string. So this is C, D, E, and then this is F, G, A, B, C, D. Okay, and you see how this works, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So If you compare that with the linear version of the scale that we covered in the last video, remember that C is right here, okay? That's the one. This is the first fret of the B string. But notice the tablature down here. This is the 10th fret of the D string. So these are two different places that we can play the exact same pitch. So patterns you learn on the B string can be transformed, or not transformed, but they can be moved to this other string. This is another place where we're just sort of reusing the information we've already got. Okay, a C is a C. These two notes right here are the exact same pitch, whether you're at the 10th fret of the D string, or if I move this to the B string, you'll see this is going to move up to fret number 1. All right, that's the same pitch. And you might have seen as I cross the G string, that's the 5th fret of the G string. All of these are the same pitch. It produces the exact number of vibrations per second. The difference, obviously, aside from the position of each of these notes, is the timbre or the tone quality. As you get up to the more treble strings, the tone is going to get brighter and brighter. Whereas if you do this same pitch on the bass strings, it's going to get lower and lower. Okay, that's something to pay attention to, especially if you're transcribing songs from your favorite artists. If the pitches sound particularly bright, then you can probably tell that they're doing something on one of the 3 treble strings. And if it sounds a little darker, they'd probably be on the bass strings. Now, the guitar, the pickups, the cables, the amps, the cabinets, the speakers they're using, that all colors the sound to a point too. But with a little bit of practice, you'll be able to tell whether they're using treble strings or bass strings. And now you can see that there are multiple places to play the same pitch. So if you learn those, they can become anchor points for almost anything else that you're doing. All right, so now between those two videos, between the linear scales thing that I did last week with the notation and this one, hopefully you're starting to see that these notes spread out, like these pitches, you can play the same pitch in a lot of different places. And what's cool about this too is that the fingerings don't need to change, okay? So if you remember when I demonstrated the 3 notes per string pattern, I had mentioned that we're going to use the same fingering that we used from the linear scales. All right, we used our first finger. So for this note here, we use our first finger, second finger, fourth finger. We do the same thing here, first, second, first, second, fourth. And then here we use our first, second, fourth again, only this time without a stretch in between. And then when we get up here, we're using our first, our third, and fourth fingers. Okay, but there's a few different fingerings that you can do with that. And the idea is that for purposes of this exercise, you want to do the same thing going up as you do going down. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Now, there's one other thing that I want to cover in this, and that is how these scale fingerings, how this scale and the way it's laid out on the guitar with 3 notes on each string. I want to show you how that can be used for different riffs in your playing, whether you're improvising or whether you're trying to figure out a melody or you're composing something. Not that this is the only way. This is just an introduction, and I'm actually going to cover this in more detail in a video. I'm going to demonstrate it on the guitar instead of on the notation like this. But this scale right here, these are your building blocks for the key of C. All right, and so each chord is made up of 3 of these notes. So the chord C, which is the first chord, what we call the tonic of a key, has the notes C, E, and G. We just sort of take every other note. C, E, and G. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of chord symbols up here. Here's C. And, oops, it's going the wrong way. Let's bring that down. So C, if you play a C chord over these first 3 notes, you'll hear that even on this very simple MIDI representation here, you're going to hear that that the 3 notes being played in the scale fit over it very nicely. Check this out. Right? That fits really, really nicely, right? Now check this out. I'm gonna, over the next 3 notes. Oh, so let me back up. So the notes, like I said, in the C chord are C, E, and G. And so what do we have here? We have C, D, and E. So 2 out of those 3 notes are in that chord, which is why that fits so nicely. Now I could keep going up, but check out how this is laid out. Okay, we've got 3 notes on the A string now. Okay, we've got the notes F, G, and A. Now the notes of an F chord are F, A, and C. So just like the C chord, 2 out of the 3 notes on this string fit in one chord. All right, that's going to be an F chord. And so if I play both of those, if I play that one, all right, I'm going to start here on note 4 and check this out. All right, that sounds pretty good. So I play the 2 of those together. Right now, of course, this is going to sound, you probably listen to it, it sounds really cheesy. Not only is it just this MIDI interpretation as opposed to actually playing this on the guitar, but you know, it sounds very, very square, very classical, and it is. But that doesn't mean that we can't adapt it to things that that sound cooler and sound more in our style. Okay, but this is just a very quick visual reference for how each string on the guitar in this scale pattern fits in with a chord. This is something that you can start to use in your writing. Now check this out. I have 2 choices here. I'm going to do sort of the less, I'm going to do the more common version. So the notes on the next string, we've got B, C, and D. And those notes fall very neatly into a G chord. Okay, the notes of G are going to be G, B, and D. So in this case, it's the last 2 notes. There's another chord that fits in there too, which is a B diminished chord, and that's going to be B, D, and F, which I could use here as well. But the more common, if you're talking about just straight up rock songs, pop songs, that kind of thing, you're gonna hear G more often than you're gonna hear B diminished. So if I put the G in here as well, and I'm gonna play from here, you'll hear that it fits together very nicely. Check this out. Right? So if I play that whole thing, we hear some actual progression. Check this out. Right? That's kind of cool. You have a foundation. You can create some melodic material with that. Going back here, now I'm gonna play around with some things a little bit. So C, F, and G. These are probably some of the most common chords in rock. Like if you're going back to the blues, for example, this is going to be a C7 chord, this is going to be an F7 chord, and a G7 chord. And so some of these notes in this scale fingering will obviously fit. Not so much with the 7 versions of them, but with the triad C, F, and G, obviously you can hear how this goes together. And so what I'm going to do here is we're going to fill out some of the other some of the other chords in the key. Okay, so here I've got the notes. This is on the G string now. We've got E, F, and G, which fit very nicely with an E minor chord. Okay, those notes are going to be E, G, and B. So of course with the E and the G, we've got 2 out of the 3 notes. So I'm going to put an E minor chord here. And what I will do is we're looking here. We'll just start the counter on that. Right, so that sounds pretty cool too. And up here we've got A, B, and C, which fits very nicely with an A minor chord, which are the notes A, C, and E. So we'll put that in there. And I will play that from there. Oops, that was supposed to go here. Right, so that works pretty well too. We've got A minor, and so we've got the notes A, B, and C. And then up here, finally, we've got the notes D, E, and F. And so that would fit very nicely with a D minor chord. And actually, I'm going to raise these up a little bit so that you can see them better. We'll put the D minor chord up here, like so. And we'll put that. That's going to be 16. Nope, not 1/16. That's going to be should be note 16. Oops, that's why that happened. So 16, try that again. All right, so those notes fit together. And if I play that all at once, from start to finish, we get this. Okay. Now, the only chord I didn't put in here, of course, was that B diminished that we talked about a second ago. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. I'm going to put that B diminished in there. And listen to what this chord sounds like. Okay. First, I'm just going to play it by itself, and then I'll play it with the rest of the progression. And let's see here. So that sounds like this with the B diminished. Sounds like this. Right, a little different than the G. If I put the G back there. Right, so it kind of depends on sort of what you want to do with it. Now, let me show you something else that's kind of interesting on this. If I do replace this with B diminished, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. If I do replace this with B diminished, and I add 3 more notes down here. Let's see, that last one ended on F. So if I bring this up here, there's F. If I go G and A and then B. This actually won't go far enough for that. Let me just put a note here. Oops. There we go. I will use another tool to get this straightened up. Okay. Now this is G, A, B. All right. Pardon the rests all the way down here on the bottom, but let me put this into the tablature as well. I'm going to copy this down here, and it's going to ask me for the lowest fret, which in this case is the 14th. And that's 15, 17, 19. Now check this out. If I leave the B diminished in this area right here, these are the notes G, A, B, which if you're paying attention, are going to be part of a G chord, right? So I'm going to put that G right down here. It's going to be on this. All right, and I'm going to move this out of the way so that you can see, at least I hope I am. I'll move this out of the way so you can see it, but I guess it won't let me. So I'm just going to move it up. There we go. Okay, so what's very cool about this is now following a sort of circle of fifths progression. C moves to F, right? So if we're going backwards along the circle of fifths, with respect to the key, okay, we're in the key, so we're not using the flats because there are no flats in the key of C. But we move backwards 5 notes from C, we get F. We move backwards 5 notes from F, we get B. Back 5 notes gives us E, then A, then D, then G. And if I play this whole thing from the beginning, check this out. This is a really cool relationship. Now, if it sounds like it needs something at that point, you would be absolutely correct. It needs that, what we call a resolution. And I'm just going to take that last note right there and I'm going to add it. It's going to be a little low, but I'm going to do some octaves there, and that'll be close enough. So let me play that again, okay? Listen to how each 3 notes, each string can be matched with a chord, all right? This is really cool stuff. See that? That's kind of neat. It's really cool the way that lays out. And on the guitar, it's even cooler because now you've got this different, you've got this fingering that actually allows you to move from chord to chord easily. Okay. Now, is this the only way to do it? Absolutely not. There's so many different variations, and there are so many different ways. If you just shift from one position to the next within the same key, if I move down to the 7th fret on this, and I'm starting on B, I can get these notes, this B, D, E, this B, C, D right there. I can get that by just taking this 8th fret and sliding it down 1. Now I've got the notes B, C, D right under my fingers. Same thing, if I want this E, F, G, I can slide this 8th fret down 1 fret to the left. As you're playing the guitar, 1 fret to the right if you're left-handed, right? 1 fret down, that gives me 7, 8, 10. There's my notes, E, F, G, okay? So that also shows that you can take this note right here and move it up, and there's your notes, E, F, G, 7, 8, 10. Okay, here's another E, F, G, right? 9, 10, 12. This group of notes and this group of notes, they're an octave apart, but they're the same pitches. And that's the cool part. That's when you really get to know these scales and you understand how to spell these chords. You can see that it's very easy to kind of slide one way to another. Does it take practice? Hell yes, it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice because you have to memorize this stuff. Just like we memorize our language. And you know, I mean, we spend 12 years in English class. If you're in the American school system, from 1st grade to 12th grade to senior in high school, we have to take actual English classes. And we're learning our alphabet, our ABC song, and we're learning to read in kindergarten. So it's like 13 years, 14 years sometimes of just learning the language and all of the parts of it. So yeah, does this take time? You bet it does. And you do have to work on it. You got to spend a little bit of time on it every day. But when you're doing it in groups like this, you're focusing on one major scale and you're focusing on the chords that go with that scale and you're focusing on the fingerings that fit in that key. This whole thing becomes so easy because then on the guitar, all you got to do is shift position and just move to a different position and you're in a new key, but all of the same rules apply. So what I'm gonna do, I hope that makes sense. I hope you find this useful. I'm gonna finish out this form for you and I'm gonna leave a link in the description below, excuse me, so that you can download this this PDF and use it. And I'm gonna spell it out for all the keys, just like I did in the last download. And I really hope you guys are gonna take some time to work with this. As a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna leave this B diminished thing in here, but I'm gonna put in parentheses that a G chord works well over that. Because again, you hear the chord progression that you really use. And I'm gonna spread this all out as well. So you're going to get this sheet and I really, with some tips on it on how to use it. And I really hope you find this useful. And I really hope that you start taking it and take an active approach. Start learning a little bit of this theory. I promise you're never going to regret it. It's only going to make your life easier as you get to know the guitar and as you start to learn songs. So I'm going to stop rambling. I hope you find this useful. If you do, please share it with anybody you think might get some use out of it as well. If you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe and go practice. And I will see you in the next video.